just have to remember that you deserve to be in that space, right? If it's a ticket price you've paid the same as everyone else. If it's a dream you have to run a certain business or to make your business grow, that's your dream and it's deserving of being seen to its maximum fruition and fulfillment.
I'm Becca Poutney, wedding business marketing expert, speaker and blogger, and you're listening to the Wedding Pros Who Are Ready to Grow podcast. I'm here to share with you actionable tips, strategies and real life examples to help you take your wedding business to the next level. If you are an ambitious wedding business owner that wants to take your passion and use it to build a profitable, sustainable business doing what you love, then you're in the right place. Let's get going with today's episode. Today, I'm chatting with Vim Ziambe, an award-winning celebrant behind Forever Loved Celebrancy. 4 years into her business, and Vim has already achieved a huge amount, even appearing... Let me say that again. 4 years into her business, and Vim has already achieved a lot, even appearing as a celebrant on the BBC show The Ultimate Wedding Planner. Having been born and raised in Zimbabwe, she knows that she's underrepresented in the celebrant space, but she's turned that into her superpower. I cannot wait to hear her story. Vim, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, listeners. Lovely to be here.
It is so good to have you. I'm really excited to find out more about you, about your background, about everything you've done in your business so far. But before we get there, I always like to take my listeners back. So as I said in the intro, you were born and raised in Zimbabwe. Tell me about that, because I imagine it's a very different experience to being born and raised in the UK.
It definitely is. I came over when I was 17. So the first half of my life was in Zimbabwe. I was very fortunate that I went to a boarding school, and the boarding school, we had the same curriculum as the United Kingdom, which meant that we did the same type of GCSEs, the same type of A levels. So when I came over, as far as education, the background was already there, or at least the foundation was there. And it also meant that I speak like this because we were forced to speak like this. Of course, English is the main language in Zimbabwe, but the accent comes from having to speak properly at all times. So much so that people think I'm putting this voice on. And I'm like, no, this is how I speak. Yes, I live in Yorkshire, lived in Yorkshire for 20 years. For some reason, this is so ingrained that I can't pick up anything else. So it's been, like I said, I've used it as my superpower because I know most of my couples book me because they want someone who will be able to enunciate, someone who sounds clear, someone who really understands verse, prose, diction. And that's where I've slotted myself in.
Love it. And culturally, I mean, I know very little about Zimbabwe and what it's like. What do you think are some of the cultural differences between growing up in that country and being over here now in the UK?
To be fair, we're very similar because we're colonized by the British. So much, like I said, the education is similar. We all love a cup of tea. Very, very common in Zimbabwe. I do not know anyone who's Zimbabwean who doesn't like a cup of tea. Same with the drinking culture. So that's also the same. And then all the other languages that we speak are all secondary languages. So you'll find that if you were to go to Zimbabwe today and were to visit the capital city, Harare, you would find so much of it looks exactly the way it would in London. It's just this unknown fact by people maybe who haven't traveled to Africa much or have traveled to different parts of Africa. But when we're talking Southern Africa and Zimbabwe specifically, our cultures are very different, are very similar. I'll say that again, our cultures are very similar.
Very similar to the UK. But, Africa is a huge place. I think we can lump people into, they're from Africa. But I've been to Kenya and Tanzania. They are, yeah. I imagine, like very, very different countries to Zimbabwe.
So different. Very, very different, yes.
Okay, so what brought you to the UK? You said you moved to the UK at 17. What made you come here? Was it family? Was it work? What was going on?
Yeah, it was actually family. My mom passed away and my older sister became our guardian. So I was 17 and all my sisters were much younger than me. And so part of her will was that we were going to live with her, with my sister. And she was already in England. She had been to university and then she'd started a job. So we all came over and she became our guardian, as it were. Obviously, I was only a year from being 18, so I've kind of lived my own life since then. But it was the best decision, the best thing my mom put in place, the best decision ever made, because all our lives have just been spectacular because of it. I found England, again, because of the similarities, it feels like home. I've always felt very welcome. Like I said, I live in Yorkshire, and you would assume, or at least the assumption sometimes when I say I'm from Yorkshire, people will think that it's not a place where uh, I would be welcome or comfortable. But I've stayed here for 2 decades because I've always felt it. My kids have grown up, they've gone to school here. My daughter's now working locally. The thought of London to her is so like, why would I? So for me, it was the best thing ever. Best decision ever, definitely.
I love that. So you came to London, a huge life shift in many, many areas of your life, a big step. How did you get from being there, coming as a 17-year-old into the UK to working in weddings? Where's the gap? What's missing there?
So I think the gap is filled quite easily because my first job was with the local council and I was a housing officer. And at the time when you worked for the council, on a Friday, you would get first dibs, as it were, for jobs. And because I used to drive a lot as a housing officer and I hate driving, I would always be on the lookout for a job that was just less, that required less driving. And a job came up for a registrar. And with what it was looking for, as far as being able to speak publicly, the qualifications you needed, it all seemed to align perfectly, except I had no experience. So I just thought, again, shooting my shot, I thought I would just applied, went for an interview, and 10 years in that role, the rest is history. So became a registrar, did weddings for 10 years. The last 5 years, I was only doing weddings rather than the birth and death registrations because I just had this knack for it. I was just really good at being able to present what should be a really boring, standard, legalized ceremony, but use my personality to still make the couple feel like, "Oh, I'm glad we got Vim as our registrar. I know we had no choice, but I'm glad she's the one who turned up because our ceremony just sounded lighter, brighter. I'll try and make jokes if I can because I have a thing where I can pick up on people's energy quite quickly. So if they make a joke, as when I walk in, if the bride or groom or the groom and groom, whoever it is, makes a joke, I kind of can tell what their humor is going to be like. So even though I couldn't veer from the legalized ceremony, I could then insert my own jokes based on what their humor was, and it would usually play out really well. So that's it. So 10 years doing that, and then heard about wedding celebrancy and just thought, that sounds like a job that was made for me. Because it means, one, I can do anything, I can say anything, I can infuse my entire personality and then use their personality completely to bring the ceremony to life. So it did take me a while, but here I am, 4 years in. Again, best decision ever because business is good. Business is good, Becca.
I'm really pleased to hear it. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you'll know, particularly in the celebrant world, sometimes there's a bit of beef between registrars and celebrants. There's a bit of a misunderstanding. Sometimes they don't like each other. Well, you have that unique experience that you've lived both. So what do you think are some of the key differences between being a registrar and being an independent celebrant?
I think the main one that people talk about is the fact that, of course, it's a legal ceremony. So the script has to be standard. The wording has to be standard. And, there's no personalization because it has to be, if you're getting legally married, it has to be the exact same way it's been set up by the government. And then the second difference would be you don't get to meet the registrar. And so just because you're getting married doesn't mean you're not an anxious person, or it doesn't make you all of a sudden have this courage to stand in front of people, even if it is your family and friends. So the beauty of having an independent celebrant is you get to choose and connect with that person. So on the day that person is holding your hand, as it were. And then, of course, the personalization. When you know what your ceremony is going to sound like, the type of vibe it will have, the jokes it will have. You can personalize the vows you say to each other, when you say them, how you say them. That all it makes it a no-brainer between the two. The differences are so massive that I just wish everyone knew what a celebrant does, not just me, just what a celebrant does and uses us, because it is just, like I said, no-brainer for so many reasons.
And although it's a no-brainer in terms of personality and what you can do and for couples, actually from a personal point of view, it was probably quite a leap because a registrar was presumably, a solid job with a solid income. Being a celebrant, I assume you're self-employed and so actually you've had to take a leap from employment to self-employment. So just talk me through that. Did that happen overnight? Did you kind of phase yourself in? Was it you got to stop being a registrar to become a celebrant, or you could do a bit of both? Like, just talk me through that, because I think quite often that's a big leap for people when they're in a full-time job, whether that's in weddings or not, to try and go, no, but I really want to do this over there, but that feels very scary.
Thank you so much for acknowledging it, because I don't really talk about it. I'm such a positive person that I tend to I don't talk about those first 2 years, and they were the hardest of my life as far as income and employability, because you couldn't be. So all the way the registrar offices are set up is the superintendent registrar is the boss, as it were, and she makes decisions on whether someone can leave a job and maybe work part-time and then become a celebrant. My particular registrar office and the registrar I worked under, those two things can't conflict of interest as far as she's concerned. She doesn't want us going out as registrars, having maybe the guests really like the ceremony, and then future couples not going to the registrar office and deciding to have a celebrant-led ceremony. So you can't be a celebrant and a registrar. So when I approached her with, my idea, and this was the information she gave me, it was at that point that I had to make a decision. Do I just believe that I will find my couples, I will find my tribe, as it were, and take the leap of faith and leave a solid job? Or do I stay in employment? Because I am still fortunate. I'm still part of weddings in a way. I'm part of ceremonies in a way. It might not be my full creative desire that I'm fulfilling, but I'm still in it. But I just thought I've waited long enough and life has been good to me generally. So why not just, better myself? And it was around COVID. So again, ceremonies had stopped, weddings had stopped. So I had a lot of time to really think about this decision. And that's what I did. I looked up some training, found a great training company. They're called the Celebrants Collective. I'll shout their names from the rooftops. Their training was all virtual because of COVID. Did my training, got certified, gave notice, so resigned from my job, and the rest is history. This is it.
And I think it's really important we acknowledge that, because it's really easy for us to have a conversation and look back and go, I'm really glad I did it. But in that moment, and there'll be people listening who are right in that moment, it's really difficult. It's really hard to know what to do. And it's tough. And I think it's important that we talk about those tough times as well as the good things. So you did it. You left your job. You did your training. Like, how did you get your first booking? Like, where did it come from?
So I did my job, then I found, so next thing I thought was obviously a website, because how are people going to find me? Found something online, a really cheap website builder. It's built by students, so you pay a nominal amount. Built this website, left it parked, and then just started going out to different venues in the area. So there are lots of venues that I would know as a registrar in my area. And of course, because they're licensed for registrars, I knew that it was, it's a huge ask to say, if anyone wants a celebrant ceremony, and I know you loved me working there as a registrar in that capacity, please just know that I'm now a celebrant. And if you ever have any dates that the registrars can fulfill, please give them my details. Now, I knocked on so many doors and made, and just those relationships that I'd cultivated over those years are the ones that I went and hoped they would come to fruition, that they would help me out. And it was too big an ask, unfortunately, because as much as you're a celebrant, because of what venues have to pay to be licensed for registrars, they just feel like the money that they pay so that people can get married legally. So for them, what do they gain from having a celebrant? So it was that I couldn't really explain at the time. I'm now so much better explaining, and we'll talk about it. But it took me a while to get that first booking. When it did finally come, it had come just from Google. Someone on Google sent me an email saying, I've just seen your website, it's come up, but the inquiry form isn't working. So I've sent you an email instead because you've got your email address on the website. Are you available to do our wedding on so and so date? I was like, what? Wait, first of all, what's wrong with the inquiry form? Um, and then yeah, so we got in touch. They got in touch. We connected. They booked me, and from that booking, it just followed on from there. I mean, there was a lot of work, but I know we don't have time. There was a lot of marketing I had to do. I had to eventually find a business coach. I had to eventually get rid of that website that wasn't working and upgrade it and invest in one. But that's all, I guess, a story for another day.
Yeah, although it's important because, again, I think we learn from those mistakes. And that actually brings me on to my next question around what mistakes have you made? Because I think sometimes when we reflect on our mistakes, it stops someone else making them. Now, obviously, one mistake was your website inquiry form wasn't working. And I wish that was an unusual story, but I hear it a lot. I say to people, at least a couple of times a year, check your inquiry form. Because although this person went out of their way to email you, there could have been other people that tried and just never got in touch with you because the form was broken. And it's such a simple mistake. What other mistakes did you make? Are there things you look back and you think, oh, I wouldn't do that again?
Oh, 100%. Going out and just assuming that that because they liked me in the capacity of a registrar, that these venue owners or the people that ran these venues would happily just, help me business wise. When there is, it's still a business, what do they have to gain? And the website was the big mistake. Besides the inquiry form and not checking it, trying to do things cheaply, if I can say that. Sometimes if you're selling something that is a luxury to most people, because it is, when you hire a wedding celebrant, to a certain degree it is a luxury, because if you're wanting your legal ceremony, you're still going to go to the register office, do the statutory ceremony, and then pay a wedding celebrant to then officiate or to conduct your ceremony elsewhere. So if you're expecting people to spend money for a service that is luxury, then how are you not investing the same, money, effort into something that you're expecting them to? So website was a big one. Business coach, again, assuming that because I was a registrar, that I knew so much. It is still a business that I'm running. I've been employed all my life. First time I've ever run a business. The naivete to think that I could run a business because I knew that I loved English literature and poetry and loved vows and people. That's beautiful. It's great. It's a great fairy tale. But really, business wise, you need someone. You need someone who's a coach. You need to have them not just for the first month or two. Let them guide you. They're worth their weight in gold. And that's where we come to how we connected, because I had Lena of Lena Della Luna, and she was the best thing. Honestly, she was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. Bumping into her at a networking event, and she's one half of a photography team. And she mentioned that she had just started her coaching business. And that conversation was the deal breaker. I know that I owe so much of my success to Lena, because I finally decided that I needed to invest more in me and my business.
Yeah, and I think it's that same thing. There's a couple of things in what you say there. We always say buy cheap, buy twice. We can put up a really cheap website, but ultimately, eventually, it's going to let us down, and we probably do need to invest. But that's hard. We don't always have the money up front. And I think the second thing about the naivety, I think sometimes a bit of naivety is a good thing, because actually if we know everything, we wouldn't quit the job and go into being a celebrant, because we would be way too scared. But you're right, if there's things that we can do, or if we've got money to invest in a coach and someone who can guide us through those things that we don't know, because I talk about it a lot. I'm no good at doing hair or doing a ceremony or baking a cake, but I can help you with the business side of things. You may be an amazing celebrant or registrar, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a business mindset. And I think having someone help you actually opens doors and just gets you there quicker. It's not because you're not good enough, if that makes sense. So a little bit of naivety is good, but there's definitely wisdom in getting some help along the way as well. So right now in your business then, Vim, if you were to describe to me your current client base, like where do you sit in the market? Are you, mid-market? Who are the people that you're working with now?
See, honestly, it's going to sound, I'm going to have to say it's a mix. That's honestly the truth, because my last ceremony was in Cape Town. And that was a destination wedding. And the couple are based in England, and they found me here and flew me out to Cape Town, and I officiated their ceremony. The one before that was a couple based in the United States. their wedding planner in France found me because of our similar cultural backgrounds, and they flew me out to France. But the wedding before that was right down the road at this gorgeous luxury hot tub lodge retreat. This couple got engaged there a couple of years ago, and they decided to get married, well, is to elope on the grounds of that same retreat. And that was 10 minutes down the road from me. And the reason they booked me or hired me again is because they really care about poetry and the words that they say to each other. And because that's what my selling point is, that's why they booked me. So when I say it's a mix, I mean it's a mix, because whether it's because of my cultural background or similarities with a couple, or whether it's because I travel so much, so a couple who's traveling really further afield will know that logistically I won't be a problem, or whether it is just down the road because someone wants the poetic side of what I bring to a ceremony. That's where I'm finding that when I said to you that, when we spoke earlier, when I said that my superpower has become these things that are different about me. The fact that I was born in Zimbabwe, then live in England, so I understand the cultural differences, and I understand so much about different weddings as far as culture, multi-faith, location. And so I'm finding that different couples are finding me and wanting me for those differences that are in me. The things that I thought, would not give me a solid place in the market are exactly the things that are making me shine in this industry.
Love that. We're going to come on to that a little bit more in a minute for sure, because I think there's loads more questions I could ask you in that area. So you say you're a mix. Now, there'll be people listening who are Vim 4 years ago. They've just quit their job. They want to be a celebrant. They're naively going to venues who are turning them away, and they're feeling like, is anything ever going to work for me? So when you look at your current client base, where are they coming from? What marketing activities work for you right now? How are you generating your inquiries? And be completely honest.
Social media. And social media is free. So I think the best thing you can do for anyone, of course, get a proper website, check your inquiry form, like Becca says. It's so important because, exactly like you said, imagine the amount of people that might have been put off by it and not inquired at all. Even if they had found my website, I still think they might have not found it because I've only just found out about SEO, but that's a conversation for another day. So I would say most of my couples find me on social media. They might not send me the inquiry from social media, but my social media, once they found it or once they've seen what I provide or who I am, it then brings them to the website where they then fill in an inquiry form, which is working, of course. So I think for anyone who's feeling like, where do I go? I've been to the venues, I've knocked on as many doors as I can. Just start posting, because people buy people. And so if you know that you've got this enthusiasm and this excitement for this job and this role in this business that you're undertaking, share it with the world, because you'll find people have been so, they've been so welcoming. I'm not great with admin. I'm really not great with all this stuff, but people will book me and will know that I'm not great with that other stuff and won't care because they've booked Vim. They know Vim is showing up and weight matters. Vim is putting our ceremony together. Vim is helping us write the vows. Vim is writing this poem for us. That's what matters. Now, whether she connects on Zoom straight away or needs to be told what to click or whatever, that doesn't matter. And so that's what I would say to anyone starting. Social media is so important. Visibility is so important. Get online, get on all the different platforms and just talk. Talk about who you are, talk about why you're doing what you're doing, share your passion with the world, and then and watch people come to you.
So what are you doing on social media? Because I'm talking a lot at the moment about how social media has shifted. I've got this brand new talk I've been doing called What the Social Media Has Happened, because social media has changed so much in the last couple of years. It's all video focused. So what are you doing? Are you going on video? Are you making reels? Are you going on stories? Like, how are you reaching new people? How are people finding you?
So this is where a business coach was amazing. So again, I'll talk about Lena just really quickly. And she basically said, so you've got 7 days in the week, schedule something different for every single day. So as far as reels, posts, carousels, do everything, but do it knowing that on a Monday, it's definitely the day I post a fun fact about registrar versus celebrant. On a Tuesday, it's definitely going to be a reel, whether it's a venue I've attended or my last ceremony, or talking to another vendor that I met at a wedding, or when I was officiating a ceremony. Make sure that you're using everything you can, because different people will enjoy different themes. Some people will absolutely love a reel. It's short, it's quick, you put some music on there, it's entertaining. Some people really want to look at posts, reviews. They want to read what your last couple said. So that's important to them, rather than, seeing where the last venue you were at. So try everything. And that's exactly what I do. I really have no idea what works. I know if you look at the stuff at the back, as far as Instagram is concerned, for example, it has insights. So to tell you what performed well, or what performs well, or when people clicked on this. I really don't get caught up in all the statistics. I just think as long as I'm showing up authentically as often as I possibly can, then I know I'm doing the work. And so it's been working, clearly.
And you know what? As a marketeer myself, I don't need to go and look at your stats to know what's working for you. I can guarantee, without ever looking at any of your social media posts, what's working for you and what's making you stand out is the fact that you are boldly and unapologetically being yourself and showing up as you, because it's your personality that's infectious, and your no-nonsense attitude, and just the way you're not afraid to say, yeah, I don't do technology, but I'll give you a great ceremony. Like, I guarantee that's what's making people resonate with you on social media.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
So let me just talk about those weddings you mentioned, because you said these glamorous things about people flying you out to Cape Town and taking you to France, and people are probably listening and thinking, well, how could I ever do that? So did those people find you on social media, or were they, networking contacts? Is it a planner you've met at an event somewhere that's put you forward? Like, just give us the nuts and bolts. How do these things come into Vim's life?
Okay, so in real life examples, the one in France, the one in Bordeaux in October, that wedding planner found me on Instagram. She sent me a DM on Instagram, and she said she was looking for a particular celebrant, which she knows from being a wedding planner they don't have in Bordeaux. So she thought she'd look at the UK. And this is a conversation I had with her when she inquired, because I, again, just stopped being scared to ask. I used to be so grateful for the booking or the inquiry that I wouldn't want to ask where they found me, because I don't want them to say, I don't know, we found you on so-and-so. And then I think, oh, I'm cringing at that reel that I posted. I can't believe that's where you found me. So I always just felt like, just be grateful for it. But obviously that's not the way business works. If you know where they found you, then you know what to keep investing in. So she found me on social media. And that's because, again, I was visible. She said she'd been following me for a few months. I hadn't noticed the follow. So it meant that the fact that I continued to show up in different ways, she made a decision that this person seems right for my couple. But before I introduce her to my couple, I will inquire with her, find out how much she, what she provides, what she charges, and then I'll pass her on if it's a great fit as far as everything else. But personality-wise, that's where it started. So again, when I say show up, it's so important. The one down the road, I knocked on that door when I first started. I knew that there was this luxury hot tub lodge retreat, and they were always posting proposals. How people would go for the weekend and they'd get proposed. And so I Googled them and checked, do they have a license for weddings? No. Do they do weddings? No. So on a Sunday, took my business cards, drove the 45 minutes out there, knocked on their door, and introduced myself. I literally said, hi, I'm Vim. I live locally. I love your space. And I've just been certified as a wedding celebrant. And I think your space, especially the place where people get engaged, would be great for micro weddings or elopements. And she said, come in, let's talk more, because it's been on our mind to one day do it. And so maybe this is it. That was 4 years ago. This year, 6 of my couples are from that place because I've become their resident celebrant. So as soon as a couple inquires to get married there, they automatically send the inquiry to me and say, we work with Vim. You don't have to, but we know her. She's great. She now knows our space, and this is what she charges. So we would highly recommend her. And every single couple they send to me book with me. So yeah, it's been a mix. So it's a mix of where I get my couples. Some of it was my work. Well, all of it is my work in a way, right? Because even if it's Instagram, it's all my work. But also, like I said, when you show up, then people know you exist. So show up, be visible.
You know what's really interesting hearing your story there? It kind of takes me full circle to something you said earlier, because you talked about when you first qualified and you went knocking on venue doors and you were naive in that you were going to them thinking, well, they like me, therefore they want to support my business. And if we look at the heart of that, where that didn't quite work, is because really we are knocking on the door asking for something for ourselves that they don't need to give. Whereas in your second example, where you talk about the venue, you'd seen something in what they had and you actually were going to give. You were going to inspire, you were going to tell them they had this great opportunity, you could help them with it. And so, although it feels like the same thing, it's a very different experience. And I think, something I teach all the time when we want to partner with people, we need to think about what we can give and not what we can take. And I think, two very similar experiences, but with a totally different mindset and therefore a totally different outcome. So, in the intro to today's podcast, Vim, one of the things I talked about was how you feel like you are underrepresented in the celebrant industry. You have an African heritage, and we do see that actually a lot of celebrants that I come across are white, maybe middle-aged women, and you definitely don't fit into the same demographic. So, like you said, you use that as your superpower. So, talk to me more about how you're using that and leaning into it rather than being afraid of it.
Yeah, I think again, this comes from networking. I would walk into the networking space and, almost everyone didn't look like me, which meant that I had to not only be confident in who I am, confident in the fact that I deserve to be in that space, but I also use the fact that people maybe underestimate me. And I'm not, and it's not coming from any other reason except if you don't look like what we're used to, then we're not sure if you can offer what other people what the people we're used to would offer. So I would make it a point to speak a lot. So I would force myself to introduce myself to as many people in a room as possible. One, so that they could hear, my enthusiasm for what I do. I would talk very deeply about how I construct a ceremony. And when I say deeply, I mean this poem that I keep talking about, that I write for all of my couples. It is something that is very creative. It's definitely a talent, not just a skill that I have. But no one will know you have it by just looking at you. So talk about your powers. So I think, yeah, so it's people expecting me not to be who I am. I use that to my advantage to then make them think, I didn't realize that, you do this or that you're in this role. And I didn't realize that you offer this on top of what other people offer. So my superpower, like I said, is just that. It's just letting people underestimate me, but then making sure that by the time I leave their space, they know exactly who I am and what I offer.
Yeah. And to be honest, what a shame that people do underestimate you because they absolutely should not. And I think, like you say, you don't think it's not a personal thing. It's maybe just where we are in society, but we ought to be doing more to break that down and for that not to be a thing, because why should we be, thought of as, underestimated just because of our culture, our background, our religion, what we look like? Like, absolutely not. We should be judged on our own merit. And, for many people, they would back away in a situation like that. And what I love about you is you're the opposite. You're like, no, do not underestimate me. Here I am. And we feel that sometimes, even as women, just as a gender thing, that's the only thing I can relate to in that. But, we can go in a space and people see you as a woman and think, well, I can't learn anything from her, which is ridiculous. Exactly. And so I also understand that in that sense, that point of like, we're having to work harder all the time to prove ourselves and prove our worth. And that can be exhausting. As an industry as a whole, I do think we still have a massive problem with representation, both in terms of like representing couples from different cultures and backgrounds who are getting married. In your opinion, what can we do better as an industry as a whole?
So when I did my training, I actually I trained with the Celebrants Collective because they were looking to train more Black people or people from an African or Caribbean background. Because, like you said, there's not enough celebrants that look like me. And yet, obviously, there's people like me who are very good at what I do. And I think that's what we need as an industry. I think we need to, training centers and giving people jobs, giving them to people who don't look like what people would expect, so that we can then over time change that narrative. If I was in a room of 200 people, and someone said, I'm looking for a wedding celebrant, and I can tell who the wedding celebrant in this room is, it is very unlikely that someone would point at me and expect me to be doing that role. So I would love the shift. I would love to see a shift in more companies like the Celebrants Collective saying, we offer this discounted training for people maybe from, which they do, a lower income background, or sorry, a lower income household with a different background, because we want more representation in the wedding industry. That's the reason why I'm sat here talking to you today. They offered me something that I would have never been able to afford, something that I didn't know was available for someone like me. And because they set me up in that way, I can now pay it forward, as it were. And it is
Yeah.
something that I really, yeah, as part of my goal in life, I definitely want to eventually have um, some sort of either like mentorship or training programs where someone who looks like me can come under my wing, so that more people who look like me can be out there representing us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think, something I've been thinking about as well is I think we all need to do better at putting ourselves in each other's spaces because, sometimes, we're surrounded, if I go to an event and everyone at that event who's chosen to attend it looks like me, then they're the only people I can network with. Not because I don't want to network outside of that, but if they're the only people that come into the room, there is nowhere else for me to talk to them. And so I think it's on both of us. I think we need to go into more rooms that we feel uncomfortable in. I think we need to be in more rooms where there's less people that look like us and more people that look different. But that works both ways, So I need people to come into my rooms, to come into my spaces, to come to my events from all different cultural backgrounds so that I can meet people and open my own experience and have different voices on my podcast, different voices on my stages, because I've got to know people in different ways. But if you don't come into the room and shoot your shot, as we've been saying all the way through, like that's really difficult. And on the same wavelength, I've got to put myself in other rooms, speak at different events, and get to know people in different ways as well. So, if people are listening and thinking, oh, that feels a bit scary, Vim, I don't want to go into a room of people that maybe aren't like me, don't have the same heritage, don't look like me, how would you encourage them to do more of that?
I think 100%. You just have to remember that you deserve to be in that space, right? If it's a ticket price you've paid the same as everyone else. If it's a dream you have to run a certain business or to make your business grow, that's your dream, and it's deserving of being seen to its maximum fruition and fulfillment. So you deserve it, and once you walk in that space, in that belief, you will know that in any room, no matter how it makes you feel. Um, you deserve to be there. So make the most of it when you're there, because that's another thing, right? When I first started, and the way I would have met Lena is I would walk into the space. I'm qualified to be in the space. I've paid to be in the space, but now I'm stood there feeling like, but really don't feel like this is a space where I feel comfortable. Force yourself. Force yourself to have those conversations. You'll find people are much more warm and welcoming than you realize. But you do have to put the work in, as far as introducing yourself, speaking about what you do, making sure that people don't just remember you for being that the only black face, or the only one from an African heritage in that space. Let them say, yes, she's black and she's from an African background, but she's a fantastic celebrant. And these poems that she writes, have you seen her reviews? Have you seen her social media? Leave them with much more to talk about than who you walked into that space as.
I 100% agree. And I think sometimes we carry those feelings into a space and then we sort of self-reflect. So we may feel uncomfortable. What we really need to remember is probably everyone in that space is feeling uncomfortable for their own reasons, whether they're a bit shy, whether they feel like someone's better than them at something, their prices aren't good enough. We all feel uncomfortable in different spaces, but we need to lean into what you have said throughout this conversation. Like, just go in as yourself. You deserve to be there no more or no less than anyone else. I talk about this a lot on my podcast. I hate it if anyone thinks that they can't come to anything I ever do because they're not good enough. Like, everyone is good enough to be in my space. There is no levels. You can be earning multi-millions of pounds or £10. I do not care. If you want to be there to learn and to grow and to network, come into the space and don't put your own worries ahead of that. Now, if you're going into a space that the person leading it does not feel that way, then that might not be a space you want to be in anyway. And so you've got to be discerning. You've got to try
Exactly.
places. You may go, I've been to events and thought, yeah, this isn't my vibe. I won't come here again. But I'm glad I did it once.
No, honestly, I mean, now that we're talking about it, actually, the reason I sent you the email was because my love for how you talk about inclusivity. I know I keep, I'm doing the big I am and talking about how I walk into spaces and demand that people know who I am. But of course, it was a confidence thing. And so, of course, it took me a while to be here. But if I'd had more people like you who run events, conferences, and make it a point to say over and over again, you are welcome. This is an inclusive space. I don't care how much you earn. I don't care where you are in business, whether you consider yourself a high flyer or whether you're just starting out. I promise there's someone you'll be able to relate to because you are welcome in this space that I'm creating. And that's your voice. That's what I've learned, what I've learned that you are from your podcast and how you speak. And so hats off to you. I know Wed Pros Live will be a really amazing, inclusive space. I'm not anxious about coming because I know for a fact that as soon as I walk in, it's somewhere that I'm very welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is a friend of mine if they're coming into my space, for sure. And I think so much of it boils down to confidence. And what I love about you, Vim, is, we said it all the way through this. You reached out to me. You said, hey, Becca, I've got this to share. Can I come on your podcast? And I said, yes. And so often we're so anticipating a no that we don't even send the email. And sometimes it might be a no. Sometimes it's not the right fit, but we can't put what we're thinking on someone else because sometimes we just land in the inbox. We turn up at the venue just when they're thinking, oh, maybe weddings is for us. And it turns into this huge business opportunity. So I think people listening, what you need to take from today's conversation is be unapologetically yourself and just go for it. Put yourself in spaces so you can be seen and heard and people can see who you are and why you're amazing at what you do. Vim, before I let you go, I always end my podcast with the same question, which is this. What's one thing you personally wish you'd known sooner in your own business?
I think the importance of getting a coach. The industry is saturated and there's so many people that do the job well. So if you're coming into an industry, just because you have a skill or talent doesn't mean you know the runnings of a business. It doesn't mean you know exactly who to go to and where to go to almost guarantee success. So I wish I'd known that sooner. I wish I'd just thought I need to find someone who's been in the industry, who's coaching and teaching people about how to succeed, and then just hang on to them for as long as I need, rather than trying to do everything myself at the start.
Vim, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. If people want to find out more about you, about your business, where are the best places for them to find you?
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram. I love Instagram, foreverloved_celebrancy. My website is foreverlovedcelebrancy.com. You can also find me on TikTok. I've started a TikTok, and on Facebook, the same thing, Forever Loved Celebrancy.
Fantastic. I will make sure I put all of the links to you and into the show notes underneath here. And hopefully you're going to be at Wed Pros Live in London. So if people want to meet you in person, they can come along and see you in that space. Vim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Becca. Honestly, it's been one of the best conversations I've had in a really long time. I hope we can do this again sometime soon and have a really, really, really lovely rest of your week.
What a fantastic conversation me and Vim have just had. There is so much there. I could have spoken to her all day about all of these different nuances, but what really shines for me is how she's being unapologetically herself while also being a great representative for the industry and showing that you can walk into any room and show people exactly what you can do and be successful. It doesn't matter what you look like, your background, your religion, your gender. I don't care. Just be unapologetically yourself and serve your couples well. I'll see you all next time.